compute and they make a mistake, lives are at stake. Okay, so that's my dad. And until today, he's hunched over his calculator, his math, and all of his computations. Because that's the way he is. He's an engineer. That's the way he views the world. And I guess just to give you an idea, that means he's a very risk-averse person. The second thing is, I guess, just to share a little bit about my mom. Unfortunately, both of them weren't Ateneans, no. But I'll segue into that in a bit. My mom naman, from her generation, when she graduated, she went into a bank, Hong Kong Shanghai Bank, and unbelievable as it may sound, especially to this generation, stayed there for 33 years. So she was only with one company her entire life. And she retired actually just a few years ago, a bank executive. And today, when I look at this generation, every 6 months nagpapalit ng trabaho. But I'm sharing that because it will give you an idea also that my mom was also had a paradigm around the world that was looking at it from a very safe lens. And again, both of them were really good, and both of them were achievers. My dad's very brilliant. He was the second placer in the bar, and my mom was a bank executive. But both of them had a paradigm that the world or decisions have to be made in the context of what is safe. And so when they looked for a school for me, then they opted for a safe decision. And of course, what safer bet can there be than the Ateneo? And so I went here for grade school, I went here for high school, and hindi pa nakontento doon, I went here for college. And for the past years, I teach here, no, not just this year. So hindi pa ako napuno. I still came back. And I remember when I was graduating from Ateneo High School and going into Ateneo College, the decision criteria was fairly simple kung anong course. And sa totoo lang, there were just two lenses. Two questions. One, where were my Ateneo High School friends going? What course? And second, what is the course that will allow me to get a very good job upon graduating college? And everybody said that's management engineering. And so along with a lot of my friends, 16 of us, we went into ME. And so again, it was another safe choice. Safe choice in school, safe choice in course. Hey, Boss Lina. Okay. So again, safe choices. And then true enough, after graduating from ME, everybody that said that it was going to be easy to find a job, they were telling the truth. Because I did get into a good company, this small company called Unilever Philippines, this multinational. And again, it was a safe choice. I went to that company only because that was the path that was sort of engineered for me. So I was living the prototype life, or I was living the prototype career. Safe education, safe course, safe company. And in truth, obviously I've diverged in paths, no? But had I stayed along that trajectory, I would have ended up in a very safe place. Maybe not with Reese. That's not nice. Okay. But again, that trajectory would have led me to a very safe environment. But after 5 years working in corporate, there was a topak and a disturbance. Sige, I'll just use both. That crept to my mind. And I've discerned about this so many times because every time when there are different interviews, they ask me, why do you do what you do? And when I look at my background, none of them were social entrepreneurs or activists or even from the NGO sector. That wasn't my pedigree. And when I dig deep, I can only blame two things. One is my love of comics, and the second is my Ateneo education. And I say that in all honesty, and I'm not just saying it to Father Javi and Father Ben here. I can really, literally only blame my Ateneo education for the fact that I'm doing what I do. Because there can be no other variable in my life that would have nudged me to do so. Why? Because on the fifth year of and I was doing rather well in my job. In fact, I was a bit fast-tracked in terms of career. There's a bothering thing inside of you that just says, this is not what you're meant to do. And call it topak, call it disturbance. But I really believe it was the 16 years of Jesuit brainwashing in my head that you have to do something more, then you have to serve. I think those were the two calls to actions. And that, and take note, I wasn't sad or mad or angry with the work that I was doing. In truth, I loved what I was doing in corporate. In fact, it was so challenging. I was getting paid more money than I should have been. But it wasn't what I felt I had to do. And I guess that disturbance or that inception was started here in this school. And that's why I love going back here, because there's a certain energy or there's a certain purity when I'm in the campus. And I guess in true Ateneo fashion, talagang you discern. But I was very lucky because I've had Jesuit priests also help me along that discernment process. No? Siguro I'll start with Father Ted Gonzalez. So, in a community called Life's Directions, which also was birthed here in Ateneo, that now Father Javi is actually running, that really helped me figure out na parang, okay, what do I do? And I think that's the gift of being an Ateneo, in Ateneo, is to always ask nga, why? Okay, what to do, to discern what you're here on earth for. And so that really helped me make that transition out. Because at the end of that discernment process, that long reflection period, was then a call to action. And at that point, ang sumalo naman actually si Father Javi. Because Father Javi, at that time, we were starting Rags to Riches, and I had a fellow Atenean, si Bam nga, and we started getting into this, and of course, Reese. And we set out on social enterprise. And Father Javi, I guess, would be the face of the Jesuit, which is out there, and then let's do something. Let's be on the ground. And in truth, kasama si Father Javi, we went to Father Javi in Payatas, kami ni Reese, and that was also the seed of R2R. And now, actually, we work a lot with Father Ben. And for me, that face of the Jesuit, for me, what Father Ben represents, is the ability to look at the work we do and to look at it from the lens of the macro, and to see how we could actually scale and how we could actually impact. And so I guess parang three Jesuits that have helped me, I guess, along this process, and transition from, I guess, a safe environment to one who is actively out there in the world. People ask me if I ever regret leaving corporate, about my safe, cushy job. And in all honesty, there is not one day that I've looked back with regret. Not one single day. And I have to thank the institution that molded me for this gift of being able to live a life that is true. Siguro I'll end with this na lang. I always remember this line na parang, I forget who said it, but somebody had said that the problem with the Ateneo is that it teaches students about a world that doesn't exist. We're molded in idealism. I'm ME, but my favorite subject is philosophy. And when I listen to that line, the problem with Ateneo is that it teaches students about a world that doesn't exist. And you go out to the world and you realize it's true. The world is not the safe confines of this campus. But the flip side to that is that Ateneo teaches you to grapple with these realities, and to think of a certain ideal beyond these realities. And siguro, my belief now is that the Ateneo has helped me come to a paradigm that there is what's real, but there is also what's ideal. And our time on earth is precisely bridging that real to the ideal. And for that, I really thank this school. And I'm just overflowing with gratitude. So that's my story.
Maraming salamat, Kirk, Reese, and Mark. We'd like to open the floor for questions or insights or clarifications. Or maybe we can also listen to Ken later on, no? Ano ba topak mo rin, ha? Ganyan. And we also have, we're very privileged to have Boss Lino. We call him Boss Lino kasi for some time he was our managing director sa Rags to Riches, and we call him Boss Lino, no? That was before the Department of Education stint. So, siguro I'll start muna the question. Doon sa topak, doon sa disturbance, at doon sa hinybrid mo, Mark, sa sarili mo, pwedeng malaman ano ang state nun? Kung merong state of topak address o state of disturbance address, kumusta yung topak disturbance sa iyo ngayon? Kasi ngayon na-actualize na eh, no? Nandun pa ba yun? Buhay pa ba yun? Iba na ba yung forma niya? Are you being challenged to a different phase? Kumbaga, can you share with us at this point in your life, halimbawa, at our age now, ano yung ano yung estado niya? Let's start with Kirk.
It's continually challenged kasi nga, for instance, my dad used to ask me, "Oh, Kirk, what's the downside of you studying in Ateneo, whereas you could have studied in Iloilo?" So because sometimes you realize that really ignorance is bliss. Ignorance is bliss in a sense na, let's say kung nasa Iloilo lang ako, I didn't come here to study, my worldview is this narrow lang. I will only operate and be judged based on this worldview or exposure. When I went to Ateneo, when I came here to Ateneo, ganito na. So you operate at a wider worldview, at a wider perspective, and you are expected and judged by others, and more importantly, by yourself, based on that particular exposure. So kumbaga, every day is a struggle between the choices that are presented to you based on the different life worlds that I had. So if Mark, for instance, was the prototype of a safe thing, me being the only Atenean from the family is the guinea pig of what their life could have been had they went to Ateneo. So maraming frustration sa kanila, "Oh, Kirk, sana manager ka na ngayon ng Smart. Kirk, sana boss ka na ngayon ng ganito, hindi ka nagbe-business." So kung yung lahat ng frustration sila sa buhay na hindi nila na-achieve, sa akin napunta. Na yung pagninegosyo ko ngayon, they would think of it as a hobby lang, as a parang kapritsyo na parang, "Oh, kailan ka ba magtatrabaho?" Ganyan-ganyan. Yun pa rin yung mga tanong ng family members ko sa Iloilo. So time and again, on a day-to-day basis, those topics still are present. So the topic to discern, sometimes naisip mo, paano ko ba mako-convince sila na tama yung ginagawa ko? In terms of magis, how can I still improve my craft such that I'd be at peace and they'd be at peace? In terms of thinking and caring for the others, does it mean that I should reach out to them more? Or do I need to gain their approval to begin with? So what will, mga ganun. So, kumbaga lumalaki siya. Pero on the good side, because nga you had the experiences, you can look back and think of the things that you can tell yourself na, "Oh, I'm capable of doing this already. I'm capable of handling this because I've handled the smaller ones."
I've learned to embrace it. And actually, with my prayers, I always say, "Please don't stop disturbing me." Because once I'm stopped, once I'm not disturbed anymore, once I think I'm right every time, then that's when the real danger happens. And yun yung lagi ko sinasabi. Kasi I think that's lacking in the world is disturbance. Sana ma-disturb naman sila na mali yung ginagawa nila. We always say that. And I think it's a gift to always be disturbed. It never stops. Sometimes it gets bigger, sometimes it gets smaller. Like I think like a good skill, some of the disturbances medyo mabilis nang ma-solve. But some of them happen again. And what's important is you always get disturbed. So for me, I welcome it. Magulo siya, masakit sa ulo, puro reflect, ganyan. At dahil magis, reflect more to the highest level. So it's hard, but I wouldn't want to live any other way. I think this kind of disturbance and welcoming it is good for our communities. Once I lose this, once they lose this, then I think it's going to be dangerous. And yeah, so I think it began when I decided to embrace na natin, di talaga nawawala eh. And dahil doon, let's just pray all the time that it never goes away.
So siguro to contextualize it, parang I don't want to over-romanticize muna yung ginagawa namin kasi maraming sakit ng ulo. I don't want to create an impression that, oh, social entrepreneur, life is rosy and things are easy and ganyan. But in truth, the headaches are probably more. The problems are probably more. But you know yung difference kasi between doing and living in this environment na ito yung mga problema mo as a social entrepreneur versus yung mga problema at stress ko when I was doing something different, you don't mind, actually. So parang, you'd be happy to live with these kinds of problems, solving these kinds of problems. Kasi itong stress na to parang iba eh. I mean, hindi mo alam kung saan siya patungo eh. Ito, alam mong every time may problema at may stress and you solve something, alam mong may pinatutunguan. And so siguro, yung disturbance ko now doesn't come from, is this what I want to do or not? That is no longer, frankly, a disturbance for me. But what disturbs me really are thoughts that, is what we are doing enough? Are we, kumbaga, doing still the right choices? It's a disturbance, not on, are you here or here eh? Kumbaga, it's a disturbance already on this side. And to be honest, pag andito ka na, na-solve, na malinaw na sa'yo na you're not on this side, and you're on this path, the kind of flow, or I should say, state that I'm in is very different. Parang I cannot complain with all the problems that we still have to grapple with, eh, because these are problems you really want to solve. And I can think of no greater gift than to live a life wherein you're working on things that you want to work on, rather than asking yourself, are these things that are worth working on, or are these things I should even be doing? And so I guess that's my context of disturbance.
Oh, of course, I completely agree, no? Parang, I would always summarize kasi social entrepreneurship into 3S: service, strategy, spirituality. Service kasi we want to help the poor. Pero serving the poor is very difficult, very challenging. Tapos sinamahan mo pa ng strategy, which is the business acumen, no? The complex business world. Pinagsama mo pa yung dalawa. So parang doble talaga yung tama. And I would always submit that the only way to transcend that, to survive that, is spirituality, no? A transcendental value, which the three panelists are sharing with us, no? Sige. Any question? Si Sir Greg. Yes, sir. Mr. Domingo.
Thank you, Father Ben, and the panelists. Thank you very much for the comments and the observations. I will not narrate my life history because we might be here until tomorrow night listening. It's been a long time. I graduated from Ateneo in 1970, but also went through the Ateneo grade school, high school, and college. As I was listening to you, it's very obvious that you are striving to make a difference and to do good. No? Same time, there's a point in time in one's life where you're also trying to help others, and Father Javi knows a bit of the projects that we're doing. And the thought that keeps on coming back to my mind, we are thinking of ways of being able to attack the two most intractable problems in the Philippines today, which is hunger and poverty. No? At the same time, we can put the resources to address that, and we can make the project as simple as possible, no? So that it's easily understood and easily learned. No? My question is, in your experience though, the mindset that you have, no, to do good, the discernment, the magis, the disturbance, the focus on the options that you have, no? In helping others though who may not have options except what they have now, like a farm, but here's a group that's coming to try to give resources, technology, and networks to them in order to enable them to earn, to first be able to feed their family a more balanced diet, and then secondly, to be able to monetize the extra production that they have in order for them to use the money for their other needs. So, can the mindset that you have be transferred or conveyed to them so that then they're able to make the most of the opportunities also that are coming their way? Why am I asking this question? Because we've read that, as an example, this just one of many things, but Hacienda Luisita is the biggest land reform program that's underway now. And as we are speaking, the titles are actually being distributed to the individual farmers. and each farmer is getting about 6 to 8,000 square meters each. And just this morning, in fact, the stories are starting to come out now, that many of them want to sell, realize the cash, go live somewhere, maybe move to Manila for a few years, and then what happens? No? They might end up on the streets. No? So, how can we do that? No? How do we address that? Is it transferable or not? No?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Domingo Diaz. Just to enflesh that further and to apply that to our case, no? There was this study, socio-anthro study in UP. Kasi we would always blame, halimbawa, itong mga mahirap na to, pinili lang nila talaga si ERAP. Merong observation na gano'n. Pero merong socio-anthro study na precisely because of their condition and their context, they have been quote-unquote programmed to think in a certain way. And with that mindset, they choose a particular candidate for presidency. That is the mindset that Mr. Diaz is asking. Given the case of Hacienda Luisita, they've already parang embraced this mindset. No? As we talk right now, in fact, Attorney Aison is involved in distributing the Hacienda Luisita. He's with DAR. So Mr. Diaz is asking, is the is your mindset transferable, formable? Is someone from that particular context able, can we enable, or is he able to embrace that mindset? Is that?
That's right. Or must you be an Atenean to be able to do that? In which case, it's a sad comment. No?
Thank you for the question. It's very tricky, the question you have. If I may share our experience in Payata, so maybe we can find some similarities. So when we first came into Payatas, we're lucky because we have Father Javi who's already there. And he is the bridge to the community artisans, to the members that we have. The succeeding communities we went to, it wasn't as easy because we would go there and we would talk to the community artisans about what the possibilities are. And we realized that it's more of meeting of the minds and for us to also take on, like understand their situation while they understand the mindset. So it's always something that evolves through time. So we realized that the first thing that we had to do in a community is to not actually give them a roadmap na ito na yun, this is what we should do, this is what we have, but rather to establish trust. Because without that trust, they will never listen. So it's very difficult for them to listen if they feel that you're there because you want to take advantage of them. And it's not on them that they think that way. I think it's because of a lot of people who've been there before and promised so many things. So we were very sensitive about that. Well, in the beginning, it was difficult, but after a while, we learned that, okay, we should establish trust first. We should talk a lot, establish a relationship before we can even talk about something that we can do together. So when that happened, there was an openness. And I think with that openness from their end, it's easier to share your ideas, share what you think can work, and they can also share with you their problems openly. And we realized that when we're open for conversation, open for discussion, it's easier to fix things together. Because sometimes it's, for me, parang umpisa, alam mo na eh. Parang ito yata dapat ang gagawin natin. But when you go there, you'll be surprised, and we were surprised, that they actually knew what they needed to get out. But it's just really difficult to bridge it. And so we had to stay there for a while. I think just like any meeting of the minds, just like any adaptation of a particular mindset, it really happens over time. So the kind of mindset, whatever mindset they have, was built in decades. And so staying there for a weekend may not work. So for us, we had to really stay there. And we had to work with them to the very end. So for us, that was the formula. And I think it can work out if it's more like that. It's more inclusive, and we talk to the people we want to help, because we'll be surprised that they can really help themselves, they can help their community, they can help the country. We just have to be open to discussion with them.
part of the mindset din siguro, it's also, well, my answer would be part of, cultural din siya eh. Kasi the mindset is also cultural. How do I say this? In my experience, kunwari, when Chinese families meet, the first question they ask each other is, "Uy, what's your business?" But when Filipino families meet, "Oh, saan ka nag-work? O ano trabaho mo?" So it's a mindset talaga eh. Siguro that's one of the reasons then why my family, my relatives, who are all Filipinos, typical middle-class Filipinos, would frown upon the idea of having a business. Number one, because it's risky. Number two, because siguro their notion of a business, a startup business, is the thing that is closest to them. Meaning sari-sari store, karinderya, which by experience from the neighbors that they see, from the relatives that had similar businesses, had a very small rate or chance of success. So for those people siguro with a very fixed mindset, which is culturally rooted, siguro what Reese has mentioned is really, really helpful. Add to that, siguro they need to have more exposure to people who can be examples or role models. Why do you think Filipinos, for instance, would want to aspire for a job that would a manager job in a company? Because most people that they see whom they tag as successful have those jobs. Wala sila masyadong role models within their immediate sphere of family or friends na ganun yung ginawa. So for instance, let's say if you grew up, let's say in an environment where everybody was a lawyer, all were successful lawyers, the likelihood that you'll be a lawyer and you'll find joy in that is the same. So similar siguro sa Hacienda Luisita, they need an example, a person from whom they can base their paths on.
Can I quickly add to that? Sorry, can I quickly add to that? I agree, definitely, role models. Ideally, role models from the community. So those people who have the best potential to succeed. Kasi if we're the role models, medyo mahirap. Ang daming barriers to entry. Sasabihin, nag-aral ka eh, meron kang ganito eh, ganon. But if it's from the community, it's a different impact. I completely agree with what Kirk said.
I think I'll just build on what Reese said also. I came from corporate before doing this kind of work, no? And kasi in corporate, sometimes you have a mindset, you will it, and it will happen, and you command it, and it will get done. And of course, because you're running this big machine, but that's not how it works. I've learned to be more patient. That change, especially community-led or community-based change, is not going to happen overnight. For a lot of the reasons that were mentioned here, cultural and also the time element, no. Siguro, the mentality that it's a top-down approach is, it has to meet somewhere in the middle. It's a top-down and a bottoms-up approach at the same time, no. When we started talking to our nanays, I, armed with my Ateneo ME degree and with my Unilever 7 years, wanted to teach na ito yung kailangan natin gawin for inventory management, and mas alam nila eh. And they have more practical and better solutions. And not to say na walang kakulangan din, no, on that side, but just to say that it has to meet somewhere in the middle. I really believe that the seeds of the solution are best found with the people closest to the problem. And if we are not from there or from that context, then the solutions we could come up with might not work or have no grounding. And so it has to be a certain dialogue and a certain involvement of the community. That's something we have learned. Na hindi, ito ang gagawin, 1, 2, 3, at mangyayari. Hindi, it's not the way it works. Why? I wish, this is not empirical, unlike what Father Javi said in terms of the paper. But siguro, intuition tells us of two mindsets that we grapple with when we work with communities. One is a poverty mindset. What does this mean? Mahirap ako, magulang ko mahirap, lolo ko mahirap, lolo ng lolo ko mahirap. How can I be anything else but mahirap in the future? And so, that poverty mindset is a sentence, is a sentence of ignorance.